It's the year 2013. I've been going to the gym for about a year, training only 2 times per week. My relationship with the at the time girlfriend has finally ended. Thank God I can finally start to properly focus on myself. And it's time to start hitting the gym 4 to 5 times per week. Really hard. 2 years later, I went from this skinny ass chopstick to this. I just completed an almost 2-year bulk, force feeding my ass off, eating spoons of peanut butter and occasionally even drinking olive oil to get the required calories in for me to grow. In hindsight, was this 2-year bulk the best way to go? Let's find out, but before we do, I have a question for you. Should you bulk, should you cut, or should you maintain? Now, in the broad spectrum of things, this is strictly based on scientific theory, not taking anything practical within your own preferences and your own personal situation into account. You will see that the optimal range for non-competitive bodybuilders to cut and bulk between is 10 to 15% body fat. Below 8% body fat, your testosterone will drastically decrease. Testosterone is our primary male hormone and crucial for muscle protein synthesis. Basically the extent of how much muscle you can put on in a given time frame. And your testosterone levels from a body composition point of view are the highest between 8 to 15% of body fat. Now for us, since we're not competitive bodybuilders, it's best for us to cut until about 10% body fat, because we're not competitive bodybuilders. So once you hit the 10% range, this is the point where you want to start reverse dieting and start bulking up again. Start lean bulking until you are 15%, cut down until you're 10% again. Repeat the process over and over again and watch yourself improve. Now this is basically like a highway on which you want to go up and down. Most people, however, are 15% body fat or more and then start bulking from there. This is what I see happening all the time. They think, oh, I just want to grow. They get like this crazy burst of motivation out of nowhere after being pretty inconsistent for some time, and they want to put on muscle mass, but they're actually not ready at all for a gaining phase. So they start this gaining phase when they're 15% body fat or more. Now what happens is you will put on unnecessary amount of body fat because of a suboptimal hormone profile, ending up getting just more and more fat. So if you have this amount of body fat approximately, you do not want to bulk. Not only is it very unhealthy, but you will just get more fat. Then you cut down and then you just end up skinny fat once again, because you just, in this bulking phase, you just put on excessive amounts of body fat and not as much muscle building as you really want to and potentially could have done if you had taken on a different route. Now then you start cutting down, and the only thing you're cutting down is the fat that you've basically put on, and then you just end up at square one once again. So you basically just end up skinny fat again. You'd be much better off cutting first and then bulk once you are about 10% body fat. Now why 10% and not 8? Because 10, I would say, is the lowest amount of body fat you can have without living like a monk. Having this life as interesting as a wet sock, being a boring ass gym dude who just has to say no to everything related to social life because he just needs to eat his broccoli, chicken and rice basically all the time. So 10% is basically the lowest you can get while maintaining high quality of life. You're still able to eat out and engage in social activities. Now here's the awesome part. If you are a beginner, if you follow a very well thought through training program tailored around your unique situation based on the right knowledge, then you can put on almost the same amount of muscle cutting as compared to bulking. Now the difference is, let's say you would cut down first and you would put on almost the same amount of muscle mass. You would then have leveled up in your level of advancement, and then once you're lean, you can start lean bulking and just continue to progress from there on forward. Whereas the other person who would just get more and more fat would then need to start cutting down, ending up at basically skinny fat level again. So like 9 months further down the line, person who would first start cutting down is miles ahead of the person who wants to start bulking. So it's very important to also have this long-term vision, this long-term strategy, if you want to maximize your muscle building potential. Now, looking back on my first 2 years of training, One, I didn't have the right knowledge, and I also didn't have the right concrete personalized plan. Second, I ended up about 20% body fat, if not more. I've spent at least half of that time above 15% body fat. Now, so instead I should have just cut down at that point and started bulking again at 10%. I should have started cutting at 15 until I'm back at 10% again, and then start bulking up from 10 to 15. This approach would have been way more effective. It would have been a crazy difference down the line. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a concrete plan and have a good long-term strategy, because it really does make all the difference. Now, outside of this broad spectrum of body fat percentages to bulk and cut between, how do you know when to do the various diet phases for best long-term muscle building potential and fat loss? Let's first look into each phase and explore what you are getting in each phase. So first, let's go over the muscle gaining phase, probably the one that most of you are very excited about. So in this goal, you want to put on muscle, which automatically means that if you do not want to put on muscle, then this phase is not the one for you in this moment in time. The causes are that in almost every case, a muscle gain phase will cause some temporary marginal addition of body fat. If you do it correctly, it will result in a higher level of training fatigue as well, because smashing it really hard in the gym is absolutely kicking the shit out of you. It absolutely beats you up. Going all out in the gym is best done during a muscle building phase. The requirements before you start. Ideally, as mentioned earlier, you want to be around 10 to 12% body fat. 10 is better than 12. Some people don't want to get below 12, so then 12 would be a practical point for you to start from. If you are so active that you are below 10% body fat, sweet, even better. Now, from a practical point of view, it is important that you have a good body image. So before we looked into strictly scientific, what is the best range to move between, kind of the highway that I explained, but there are also very important practical points that you want to be checking off. What is important is that you have a very good body image and low training fatigue as well. So good body image is very important because you will be putting on a marginal amount of body fat. So if you do not like the way you look, being like, hey, let me do this phase, let's put on a bit of fat, might not hit exactly the way you had anticipated beforehand. So you're likely better off dieting off that fat first. But if you have a very good body image and you're like, fuck it, I can, put on a little bit of weight, I don't really give a fuck, then sweet, you're at least in that aspect ready to do another muscle gaining phase. Low training fatigue means your joints feel good. You feel well rested, your body feels good, you're excited to train, you can easily get a very good pump, and you're not in the position of like, man, I want to gain muscle, but I don't feel like training that hard, I'm very tired and I feel very beat up. If you are like that, then you do not want to start a muscle building phase like that either. You first need to get rid of that training fatigue and need to get excited to train again. So those are the conditions in most cases for even thinking of starting a muscle gaining phase. The recommended duration for a muscle building phase is between 12 to 20 weeks, meaning if you do not have that time frame to really dedicate to hard, consistent training, you can still do one, but maybe it wouldn't be the best choice for you right now. Next up, we have the maintenance phase, and the goal within the maintenance phase is to recover from diet and training fatigue. It is a dedicated phase that does not change your body weight that much, but it does checklist a couple of actual goals. If you are just training, kind of enjoying life, not really gaining or losing, kind of just like this balance phase, this balanced lifestyle. Most people are by default already in this balanced phase. Either way, in this phase you want to recover from diet fatigue after a cutting phase, or from training fatigue from another phase. Could be either one of those two. So basically the training fatigue that you accumulated in another phase before going into another more productive phase as cutting or bulking, fat loss or muscle gain phase. Those phases are the really productive ones when you are progressing. There's not really so much happening in this maintenance phase. You're just really setting yourself up to hop on another one of those productive phases. The maintenance phase is kind of like a cool-off phase. If you're a really dedicated career person, that's kind of what the weekend or some days off is for you. You know, those are really important to recharge so you can hit work hard again on Monday. Sleep is not enough, good nutrition is not enough. You do need some more additional rest time to really recharge. You can start hitting it hard again. That's kind of what this maintenance phase is to bulking and cutting. The cause of it is, however, that you don't really see any impressive changes. A few weeks go by, a few months go by, and you kind of just like still look the same, which can be a bit annoying, knowing that one of the biggest motivators in the gym is seeing progress, especially in the beginning when it's not really ingrained into your lifestyle, part of your true identity. You're not really training maybe as much for the benefits of energy and feeling good and all these things that you can come up with. Results are a very important aspect in the beginning, and you're not going to be seeing a lot of changes in this phase, which is annoying. Meaning most people are by default kind of in this balanced phase, which is one of the biggest reasons, next to not training hard enough, why they are not seeing any real results. So it can be very unsatisfying and very annoying that you are not seeing results and rewards for the efforts that you are already and still putting in. So in the muscle gaining phase, you would feel like more rounder, more fuller, everything's just going to be bigger, the sleeves are more tight. And like a cutting phase, you're just going to look more sharper, more leaner, better definition, all these kind of things, and you see these changes happening. It can feel a bit like a waste of time and effort, especially when the gaining and cutting phases are not done correctly, when there is nothing really to cool down from. That's also a very important one. Most people don't train hard enough in a bulking phase to really accumulate any training fatigue. Most people don't diet properly, they don't get anywhere, so there's no diet fatigue. So if you would then, once again, by default, end up in this phase, it's not really a productive one. You're not checking off those goals, those requirements before moving into another phase either. So you're really just wasting time. And unfortunately, that's what most people in the gym are doing. But since you're here, you clearly want to make a change, or you clearly do want to build some muscle and make some serious progress and get diced and lean and nice lean definition with veins and everything. However, there is still fatigue that is decreasing under the hood that is not really visible. The requirements before starting is not really a requirement, but more of an essence of the phase. If you, for example, want to get your oil changed, but come in the next week, then the mechanic is going to be like, dude, why the fuck are you here again? You just came in last week. You don't really need to get your oil changed. How often do oil changes really happen? So kind of the requirement for a oil change would be that some time needs to go by before it needs to happen again. So if you do not have high training or diet fatigue, you can probably just hop on a fat loss or a muscle gaining phase and just skip this phase entirely. The recommended duration for a maintenance phase would be at least 2 weeks. You can recover really well within 2 weeks from training fatigue. But if you have a crazy amount of diet fatigue, you got super diced, almost like a psychological insane fat loss phase you just completed, where veins are everywhere, your face is almost like sunken in, looking like a freaking zombie, or like a skull was only left, your skin basically vaporized. You're basically thinking about food all the time, and you can smell it from 50 meters away. Then up to 12 weeks you can still see benefits from staying in a maintenance phase. It can really take up to that long to see the fatigue from a dieting phase vanish. So 2 to 12 weeks is kind of the duration for a maintenance phase. That's kind of where it's at. Now obviously there is a lot of personalization, a lot of individualization within this range, but this is where it's at. Now moving on into the last phase, last but not least, the fat loss phase, the one that is mostly required for most of the people in the world, knowing that about 40 to 60% of the world is obese, sadly enough. The goal in the fat loss phase is twofold. One, obviously, you want to get rid of the fat that you've been putting on during the gaining phase, and second, you want to retain the very hard-earned muscle that you've put on. You don't want to lose fat and muscle. That's just sad. They just go from skinny fat to being just this skinny kid who's just being able to blow away in the wind, or when someone just does like this ping to your ear, just basically fly away 5 kilometers. That's not what we want. Or hearing stuff like my condolences. You're like, my condolences? What, for the body fat that I got rid of? No, dude, for the muscle that you've lost. That hits the soul really, really hard. You know how it feels like when that guy just comes up to you and says, did you get smaller? Did you get leaner? Why? Because you just look smaller. No, bro, that hits the soul. We've all been there. It freaking sucks. That's the last that we want to hear. You want to retain as much of the hard-earned muscle while losing fat. Those are the goals of the fat loss phase. Now, the cause of it is that diet fatigue within the fat loss phase will go up. You're 100% going to get diet fatigue if you are successful in this phase. You're going to get cranky, you're going to get hangry, as I call it, hungry and angry at the same time. Quickly agitated, tired, you need to sleep more, recover less fast in the gym, and you just don't really feel like a superhero at all. You just feel very weak, you feel very light. It just kind of sucks the longer you stay in this phase, but it's a very important one that we need to check off. And your training fatigue will 100% for sure go up. Your recovery capacity is going to take a big hit. It's going to be way, way lower, and a really good diet phase, you are going to feel a bit broken and a bit like a couch potato. As I like to say, you kind of just feel like a greenhouse plant. You're just breathing and existing, but you're just sitting there and not doing anything because you literally just don't have the energy. You're just breathing, paying the cost to be the boss kind of stuff. In order to start a fat loss phase, the best position you can be in, it's kind of a requirement before getting into this phase, is that you have very low diet fatigue, because 100% it is going to accumulate once you get started. Now, this is essential, otherwise you are not going to hold up for very long. This is really, really huge. If you start the next fat loss phase starving from the beginning, then where do you think that is going? You're going to fall off the wagon 100%. After a week, maybe a week or two, you're going to start binge eating, literally fall with your face first into the shelf of chocolate bars at the local grocery market. And you're going to feel really, really bad because you're starving your ass off. You're in this battle mode for 4 or 5 days. You're being able to just suck it up pretty successfully until that one moment where you just don't have the resilience to resist, and you just face first land in the chocolate shelf. And then you're gonna be like 28-year-old, maybe 35-year-old, like, I didn't put my face in the chocolate jar, when there's just freaking chocolate all over your face, like a 2-year-old. And you just want to become a man, and that's what you end up doing. No, man. Real men have control over what they put in their body. And you 100% will lose control over what you put in your body if you start a dieting phase with a lot of accumulated diet fatigue. It's just 100% not going to happen. I don't know who you are, it's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna work out very well for you. So you're going to be mad at yourself for doing it, but you should be for being uneducated, not being educated enough of the requirements before getting into a fat loss phase. If you can truly honestly tell yourself, I'm in a very, very healthy mental place when it comes to my relationship with food, and I can easily take on a few weeks without snacking, or at least very bare minimum. If you can't say that to yourself, then this phase is not the right one for you. Other requirements for being ready for this phase would be being kind of okay with only eating 2 or 3 meals per day. You're not thinking about food all the time. You don't really want to have entirely like insanely big portions of food. Small amounts are fine. You're basically maybe struggling to even finish the plate. You don't need to eat 500 to 700 grams of combined fruits and vegetables per day to feel full enough. You just are kind of okay with only eating a few meals per day and not snacking. I can stick to a rigid diet or calorie deficit and be okay. Low diet fatigue is a huge necessity to start a fat loss phase, so you can remain consistent and finish the phase without binge eating, even lowering your body image and your self-image, because you're just not setting out to accomplish the things that you want to do, so you lose belief and faith in yourself. You're just gonna feel like shit, and you're gonna be mad at yourself for no reason because you weren't ready, you didn't have the requirements. So this is the #1 requirement. So if you can't check it off, then you need to maintain for longer or do a muscle gaining phase. You should also have low training fatigue. Training fatigue is pretty tough during a fat loss phase, is also going to accumulate because of your low recovery capacity. Here's the big bottleneck, one that people always overlook. Once you have accumulated a decent amount of training fatigue, it's only going to get worse. It's just not going to get better because you don't have the recovery capacity to become better from it. You're literally eating less calories, less energy that your body needs to maintain itself. You have zero recovery capacity. So the training fatigue is just going to accumulate more and more and more. So it's also very important that you don't have any of it. Those low calories don't let you drop it very much. Even if your training fatigue during the fat loss phase is a little high, it's just going to increase from there. How in the fuck are you going to heal from it? We're once again eating less than your body requires to recover from it. You can't even maintain your same body shape. So low training fatigue really gives you this clear runway of hard training. It really prepares you for the fatigue that is going to accumulate within the dieting phase. And if you don't give yourself this clear runway, you are guaranteed going to get weaker. And once you get weaker, you are going to lose muscle. Inevitable. Now lastly, in a fat loss phase, the best way scenario for the highest probability of success, you want a clear timetable of largely uninterrupted ability to eat the food you need to eat to get leaner. And hit all your training sessions, because if you don't, your body is going to want to lose muscle instead of fat. So ensure you do not have any weddings, work events, business trips planned, because it is going to be very hard to hit all the required training sessions and stick to the diet when you have these long days of business trips and business dinners coming up with all this food in front of your face. And eventually you are just going to go wrong there. It's not just, and even if you wouldn't, let's say you would be that like 1% that is able to stick to its diet, who wants to do business with you? You're not going to be a fun person to be around if everything in front of your face you're just gonna say no to. You know how important that is. You know how big the social pressure and this expectation is. So make sure that you pick the best time frame you possibly can to start this dieting phase. And all these other things that gets in the way of your life that prevent you from being on point with your plan. In a maintenance or in a bulking phase, you are much more likely to be able to get away with it because you have more calories, so it's easier to fit, kind of if it fits your macro style, other foods within your calories and still hit the protein targets. And if you don't hit all your training sessions, the likelihood of losing muscle mass is going to be a lot lower. The best fat loss phases are kind of when you are in this boring monk mode, dialed in phase, focused on reaching your goals with a nice and clean routine and a nice and clean runway to stick to it. The closer your lifestyle gets to work, eat, sleep, train, repeat, the better your results are going to be. It is not the usual lifestyle, but the closer you get to it, the better it is going to be for your results. You do not want to diet through a business trip to Mexico or on a vacation in Spain because the food is just going to be too good. You are not going to diet through it. You have to be realistic. You have to be a realist. And how long of a fat loss phase you need is between 8 to 12 weeks. There are mini cuts and other advanced stuff that you can incorporate here and there, but generally speaking, 8 to 12 weeks is a very good period to do a diet phase in. 8 to 12 weeks, that's kind of where it's at. 8 weeks will give you some really nice results. If it's going to be shorter than that, then the results are kind of going to be like meh. And if you give it like 12 weeks, then you'll very likely complete a very nice transformation and set yourself up for a maintenance or a gaining phase. Anything longer than 12 weeks is definitely not recommended. You're going to accumulate a shit ton of diet fatigue. That's more for competitive bodybuilder stuff. We are just going to fall off the wagon, feel really bad about ourselves, not seeing any net results for the efforts from that point forward after 12 weeks. Should you gain, should you maintain, or should you cut? Now, two of the most important questions are: one, which phase's goal appeals most to you right now, in this moment in time? Do you want to put on muscle right now? Do you want to lose fat right now? Or do you just kind of want to be in this balanced lifestyle phase right now? Or do you just need to recover from training and diet fatigue? But don't say both unless you are a beginner. Of course it's both. Of course you want to put on muscle and lose fat at the same time. We all want to get to our destination as fast as possible, reach the most amount of results in the shortest time span. But we need to choose one or the other. Complete one phase, move on to the next one. That's what's going to give you the best results in the short, but as well in the long term. So which phase do you want to mostly start tackling right now? And then second, do you meet all of those requirements required to be ready to start that phase. If you do not meet those requirements, okay, then which phase do you then need to do that allows you to get to the requirements for the phase that you actually want to do at first? It's kind of like driving to a friend's place and thinking, fuck, what am I missing? Shit, I forgot his birthday presents. I'm about to go to his birthday. Okay, what can I do? I'm gonna go to the gun store. I'm gonna buy him a bulletproof vest because when we cheer for his birthday, he's going to say to all our wives and all our girlfriends, may they never meet. And then his Balkan wife is gonna get so crazy mad that she's want to kill him, so he needs to have that vest to protect his life. And then eventually he's gonna be like, bro, thank you so much, I get to live another day and I finally get to complete another dieting or gaining phase. Thank you so much, bro, you're the best friend I ever had. And I'm gonna be like, sure bro, no problem, I know what it's like. Eastern European girls, they're the best, but they come with a cost. So yeah, been there, done that, gotcha bro. So anyway, which goal appeals most to you right now? And do you meet all of the requirements needed to start that phase? Now let's run through examples. First off, I've been lifting hard for a year, no diet or training fatigue, and I feel like I'm ready to get leaner for the first time in a long time. Low diet fatigue, check. Low training fatigue, check. Large time to grind without many distractions. Well, okay, yeah, well, I do have a business trip, but it's not that important. I can basically just already hit my targets for this year within work and then just basically skip that trip. All right, let's fucking go. I do have 8 to 12 weeks. Amazing. You're all set up for a nice fat loss phase. Now, second example, you've been dieting for a while now and you want to get freaking huge. Fill out those sleeves again. Be as big and round as you possibly can be. Perfect. It is muscle gaining time. But you are really training fatigued as well. Joints and muscle are really like, fuck me, give me a break. And it looks like we don't want to do a fat loss phase, definitely, because the fatigue is just going to accumulate more and more. But we do have to reduce training fatigue. Okay, which one does that? It's a no-brainer. It's gonna be the maintenance phase. Move into the maintenance phase, stay there for 2 weeks, see how you are feeling then. If it fades away, check all the other costs and requirements. And if you are ready, then you can start getting into the gaining phase. Well, am I willing to pay the cost? And do I have all the other requirements to start this maintenance phase right now? Yes, okay, let's do that then. And then we move on into the gaining phase. Third example, you are hyped to get bigger and you are totally comfortable with gaining a little bit of fat for a few months, no diet or training fatigue, then you are absolutely ready for a muscle gaining phase. Let's freaking go. Now that last one is a little bit tricky because with guys, fat gain most of the time isn't really that big of a deal for a short period of time. However, that is something that is a bit more difficult for ladies. But ladies and maybe gentlemen, remember, if you gained like 0.25 kilograms per week, then at the end of 10 weeks, even if you really just didn't put on any muscle, you are only going to be up 2.5 kg of fat. And that's really not going to happen. You are going to put on some muscle for sure, unless you are maybe extremely elite level, which is very unlikely because you need to be very knowledgeable, have a very good plan, and probably be in the gym for at least 8 years and probably even longer, because most people who are in the gym, time doesn't really say much because they are kind of always in this balanced lifestyle mode and they're just kind of cruising it and nothing's really happening, right? So really don't be afraid of that. You're not gonna put on 2.5 kg of fat, and even if you do, then within a few weeks, it's just still such a small marginal amount of body fat. Within a few weeks, you will be able to get that off again. And then you finally have all those beautiful muscles to show for it. It's very, very unlikely that anyone at the gym or anyone at work is going to notice that you have put on 2.5 kg of fat, or what's probably going to happen, maybe 500 to 700 grams of fat over the course of 10 weeks. Very, very unlikely. They see you every day, a small marginal increases, and over time still a very small marginal amount. Not gonna happen. Don't worry about that. None of them is going to be like, damn girl, did you eat like a horse last night? It is such a tiny amount which can be cut down so super quickly, so easily. 2.5 kg in a worst case scenario, once again, not gonna happen. is able to be cut down within 4 to 6 weeks time frame. That's a very short time frame. At 2.5 kg, that's for most women even just like a period bloat. The additional weight of a period bloat that is just gonna come up and gonna come down as well. Is it amazing? Well, not really. Do your breasts and glutes feel tighter and fuller? Sure. Maybe wear some sweaters, maybe like some turtlenecks or something like that if you just really aren't that comfortable with it, but you can get through it. And at the end, you will notice that if you did cut it down just a couple of weeks later in a mini cut fat loss phase, you have all the muscle you have gained to show for it. Then you are left with ripped, beautiful, toned, gorgeous muscle and physique, and you are going to be proud and confident and ready to date that fucking hot ass Brad Pitt, Antonio Banderas looking ass Chad. And you're gonna be like, hey Antonio, and he's like, sí, let's go right now, mi amor. I love your body, duele baño, vamos. Over and over and over again. I hope that was helpful. See you next time. Ciao.